She was a very outgoing, happy, beautiful girl. The heroin was 3 times more pure than anything she'd ever used, and it killed her instantly.
It's not too difficult to hear the heartache in that mother's voice, mourning the loss of her 21-year-old daughter, Holly. Holly loved music, Holly loved the stage, and everyone she met. She was a mother of a beautiful baby boy named Noah. Holly was engaged to be married, but then on her 20th birthday, Holly's mother says, her daughter made the earth-shattering decision to try heroin just because she was curious. She used for 4 months before her family realized what was going on. Holly asked for treatment, she received it. She was clean for over a year, and then one day felt like she needed to use again to go to work. Holly bought her fix, but that would be the last time. Her mother says Holly used what she thought was a normal amount for her, but the pure heroin instantly killed her, and now sweet Noah is left without his mom, and Tondra is left without her baby girl. It's a reality Tondra never thought she'd have to face. In fact, she says the 3 most dangerous words a parent can say are "not my kid."
Well, that's probably how many parents feel, like their child doesn't fit the mold when you picture a drug addict. That's one reason Sarah Narad is sharing her story to save lives. You see, Sarah was taking honors classes in high school. She was in the student government. She played the violin in the school orchestra and held a job during summer break. Not the type of person you would imagine addicted to drugs. But at 15 years old, Sarah started her downward spiral. It included alcohol and drugs. And by 17 years old, she was an IV heroin user. She says she was depressed, so she used drugs to hide it.
People just kind of took that at face value. They didn't ever probe deeper. They didn't ask more questions. And as a result, I was like, oh, I guess, you don't care.
Sarah says looking back on her life, she may have gotten help sooner. She just needed someone to take interest.
If someone had asked if I was using, that would have opened up a conversation.
Today, Sarah helps other college kids battle addiction, and we are happy to report Sarah herself is 8 years clean.
8 years. That is awesome. 2 powerful stories that really highlight the dangers of drug use, and as if using isn't scary enough, now there's a new concern on the streets and it's turned deadly. Officials say 1 woman died, 3 other people were rushed to a hospital after they recently took pills they thought were Xanax, which is used to treat severe anxiety, but it turns out the pills were fake and contained fentanyl, an extremely strong chemical which can cause overdose and death.
This is particularly concerning to me because it involves a pill, Xanax, that is commonly bought by people who are looking to, say, come down from a night of partying.
All right, now look carefully at this. Doctors say the pill on the right is the fake pills that the victim took, and the real Xanax is there on the left.
Front and the back look almost identical to a real Xanax pill. It's extremely hard to distinguish them.
Now, on top of the unbelievable similarities, some of these pills were found on Craigslist, selling for $6. And the problem may only be growing. Paramedics across the country say 5 high school students were recently rushed to the ER after taking Xanax. Doctors have not yet confirmed if those pills were real or fake.
Well, we've talked about the drug problem here on Delmarva before. We've heard the stories, the heartache, the horror of how drugs can turn a person's life upside down.
But it's important to remember that no matter where you or maybe a loved one are in your battle, the door to get help is always open. And that's an open door one of our next guests took advantage of. Casey West is a recovering addict. Dave Parcher, the Executive Director of Kent Sussex Community Services, joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Casey, I want to cut right to the chase. Could you tell us your story?
Okay, well, I started using marijuana when I was 13 years old. By the time I was 15, I was doing cocaine, I was doing acid, whatever was available to me. I had always felt like I was kind of on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
I had loving parents, I was in cheerleading, gymnastics, I got good grades, I played softball. By the time I was 16, I was introduced to heroin, and there's where my downward spiral started.
Wow.
Did you, as you were progressing in these drugs, were you ever thinking to yourself, I shouldn't be doing this, or I could get myself in real trouble?
Yeah, I did, but my friends were doing it, so, you know, it was kind of the whole peer pressure thing, and I thought, well, it's something fun, and it numbed out those feelings of feeling like I was on the outside. It made me feel a part of.
So for someone that hasn't tried it, that might not be able to understand, What kind of feeling does it give you?
It gives you a feeling of euphoria. There's that instant rush, and then it's this calm that comes over you, that washes over you.
Yeah.
And it just is so enticing after that first time that you just want to use it again and again, and next thing you know, you're physically addicted, not just mentally.
It's like a snowball
Yeah,
effect,
absolutely.
isn't it? All right, so Dave, as we just learned, you know, we're not immune to it here on Delmarva, are we, to the drug addiction?
Absolutely not. It's in all neighborhoods, all socioeconomic groups. It's really, there's no way to pinpoint anymore certain segments that might be at high risk or high usage. It's everywhere. Now, there are people that sometimes are at higher risk. Those persons that have addiction in the family tend to be at higher risk than others. You know, people with a lot of emotional discord in their life tend to be at higher risk than others, but there's no real line anymore about, you know, who's gonna end up taking it or not. As Casey has just mentioned, you know, you've got everything going right in your life doesn't mean you're not going to start.
Right.
So becoming an addict, that's bad. I guess to take it to a whole new level of complication is if you're pregnant, because then there's the chance the baby's going to be addicted as well.
That's correct.
And that happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. We've got quite a high percentage of young ladies come into our clinic who are in fact pregnant, and the reason why they've showed up at the clinic is because they're pregnant, they're on heroin, and they want to do something about that now that they're pregnant.
And that's important. They
it's a
need to
real
speak
issue.
up about it, right?
Yes, yes,
Let the doctor know,
yes.
because that changes entirely how you're cared for.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So IV use, that's also a big problem when it comes to heroin.
That's correct. It's increasing quite a bit. I mean, a couple of years ago, I guess the biggest drug on the street was the oxycodone, OxyContin, the pills as a prescription monitoring. Delaware has a prescription monitoring program. As that's come into place, what's happened is, you know, doctors are getting much more watchful now about how they prescribe these medications, so they're not as available on the street. So cheap heroin has kind of taken over. I mean,
And with needle use, there's another threat.
well, with the cheap heroin, that's when the needle use is, we've started to see that increasing.
Right.
And a concern with needles is HIV can be transmitted through needles.
That's correct. That's one of the primary means that persons are becoming exposed to HIV, is sharing needles.
One thing that I've heard with addiction, methadone is used to help with it. But what do you say to the people who say, taking the methadone only makes me hungrier for the drug?
Right. Well, there's methadone is addictive. I mean, this methadone is an opiate agonist. In other words, it mimics what you would get from heroin, from an opiate. We tend to hold back on getting somebody started on methadone unless they've been in treatment and maybe they've had some treatment hasn't worked for them as well as it should with other means, and so and they've been addicted for a number of years. It's a pretty severe problem going on.
Yeah.
Then we'll start with the methadone. But the biggest thing about medication-assisted treatment is the word assist. That's the key word there.
It's not the treatment.
Yeah, that's not the treatment.
Yeah.
That's an adjunct to treatment.
To make it work.
The real treatment is the groups and the individual counseling, and with the focus on changing a person's thinking around, you know, around using drugs.
Then it can be successful.
Yeah.
Dave,
Yes.
thank you. Casey, thank you for sharing your story. I know it's kind of difficult to do something like this, but would you mind sharing when you hit rock bottom?
Well, I finally had been arrested so many times. I had been raped from being in the city at the time. You know, you couldn't get it down here. I just finally felt like I was walking around with no soul. I had disappointed my parents so much, my friends, my family, and I was just ready to change. I was just finally ready to do something different to help save my life. And for me, not for my parents, not for anybody else. I had to do it for me first.
And you are now clean.
5.5 years.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Casey, thank you so much. Great having you.
For more information on Kent Sussex Community Services or for a list of other programs and agencies that can help with addiction, go to WBOC.com, click on our picture at the top of the page. Another concern on Delmarva, is it disappearing? WBOC's Bill Mitch joins us next to talk about Holland Island, an area losing its fight with Mother Nature one wave at a time. Why efforts to protect it have failed and why the focus shifts to protecting its history.
And a little later on, one woman thought her cat was history after it disappeared 14 years ago. But miracles do happen, and we're going to hear about this one a little bit later on. Delmarva Live. We'll be right back.